Thank you, Judy and Ray, for hosting this today. And also, I have to just point out, I did theater classes here in the barn when I was a kid. So this is not the first time I've actually done something right here in front of a crowd, which is very interesting. Doing this here, obviously, is interesting for me. I see primarily faces I've known my entire life. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Platner. I'm from Sullivan. I was born in Blue Hill Hospital back when you could do that, and grew up in Sullivan. Went to high school in Bangor, and joined the Marine Corps after high school, and went overseas serving the Marine Corps and the Army in Iraq and Afghanistan, and moved back to Maine in around 2016, and got into oyster farming here in Sullivan, which really allowed me to come home. When I got back from my deployments, I felt quite lost and unmoored. I was very disillusioned with the wars that I had fought in. I became very critical. Plus, there's lots of stuff that you just kind of deal with towards the infantry, which I think is just how it works. But when I came back to Maine, my life turned around. I got the care from the VA that I had always needed, but couldn't get when I was living in other places. The Maine VA is a pretty spectacular organization. I moved back into my hometown and began to rebuild connections in a community that I really hadn't been part of in about 15 years at that point. And it engendered in me a deep, deep love of this place. Not just of Sullivan, not just of Eastern Maine, but of Maine in general. Maine is a very unique place. We have a very, very unique culture here. I have never lived in a place besides Maine where most people I know have at least 2 or 3 jobs. I've never lived in another place where people make a living on the sea the way that they can make a living here. We've had a very hard scrabble kind of existence for a long time. We've always taken a lot of pride in that. The idea that you can dig a couple tides in the summer, stern on a lobster boat, in the wintertime plow driveways. My mother raised us early on the idea that you rake blueberries and pick strawberries in the summer, and then you make reeds in the wintertime. She probably introduced us to that way before it was illegal. For those of you who know my mother, she definitely introduced us to that way before it was illegal. Her family's been in Maine since the 1800s, or the early 1800s. And when you look back throughout our history, not just of our family, but other families here in Maine, that kind of life, that kind of hard scrabble living, it really is part of what makes Maine Maine. It's part of what makes our unique culture its own. But there was a time not very long ago where that kind of life could put a roof over your head, and it could allow you to afford decent health care that you could access to. It allowed you to even save for retirement, possibly even send your kids to college. That no longer exists anymore. The amount of work it takes now for people just to scrape by is immense. People my age and younger, frankly, can barely afford to live around here anymore. I was speaking to someone up at Dunbar's last week. They pay over 50% of their monthly income in rent. And that's renting like not a great place up in Franklin. 50%. How someone is supposed to save for retirement or put money away to get a mortgage when you're spending 50% on rent is just, it's utterly impossible. The type of lives that we lived here, the type of hard work that we have always taken a lot of pride in, used to allow you to live a good and comfortable life, and that no longer exists. Those of us who've been lucky, like myself, who've been able to build good lives. I bought my house in 2017. If I'd waited 2 years, there's absolutely no way it could happen. I get my health care through the VA because I have the advantage, which is a weird thing to say, of being a disabled veteran. those things have allowed me to build a nice life here in Eastern Maine. But it's become essentially impossible for me to enjoy that watching the community that I love effectively fall apart. Our healthcare system, without hyperbole, is collapsing as we speak. We are down to 2 birthing centers in Eastern Maine. 2. In Northern Light, may no longer be taking Anthem insurance. So if you are unlucky enough to have Anthem, I don't even know you're supposed to go for this stuff. This is all happening inside of a greater system that in the past 40 years has created and accrued more wealth and more resources than at essentially any other time in human history. And I think for a lot of us, we look at this system, we look at our neighbors struggling, we look at our communities struggling, we look at our healthcare system falling apart, we look at housing becoming unavailable and unaffordable. We all look at this and we see a broken system. But we do not live inside of a broken system. We live inside of a system that is functioning exactly as it was intended to. It is a system that is built to extract as much wealth, as much time, as much energy, as much labor out of working people as possible and funnel it up the chain into the pockets of the ultra-rich. That system, which has resulted in the collapse of healthcare, which has resulted in the collapse of housing, this is not a natural occurrence. The system that we live in is not organic. It didn't have to be this way. The world that we live in today is simply the outcome of policy decisions. Policy decisions that have been made by a political class, especially over the last 40 years, that have incentivized the consolidation of wealth and power at the expense of working people. And the thing that's been amazing for me these last couple of weeks, since we announced, is everybody knows this. Every single person in the state of Maine knows this to be true. If you walk around the state of Maine, you find any person who works for a living, and you ask them, do you think that you live in an economic system that is built to provide for you, or built to provide for the ultra-rich? What do you think the answer is going to be?
Ultra-rich.
Of course. What has been baffling to me is that, this campaign has taken off in ways that I can't imagine. 2 weeks ago, I was still just like a guy here in Sullivan. and as of right now, I'm trying to not yell too loud because I have to speak on stage with Bernie on Monday. A bit of a shift. But what I've realized, over the course of this, but frankly I've kind of realized it over the past year or so, is that down here on the ground, when you really start just talking to people about their daily needs, about what's happening in their lives, every single working person in the state of Maine has the exact same concerns. Healthcare is broken, housing is broken, nothing is affordable, wages have stagnated, prices have gone up. It's the same story across the board. And whether you vote Republican, or you vote Democrat, whether you voted for Donald Trump, you're a progressive, it doesn't matter. When you talk about this stuff, everybody's in the same boat. And what really amazes me is everybody knows who's to blame. Everybody knows that there is a class of billionaires and oligarchs and a political class that protects them that has created the situation we live in today. And yet we all spend an immense amount of time and energy down here pointing at each other left and right, when we really start to need to be pointing up. Up is where the problems are, both in our political establishment and in our economic establishment. I believe firmly that because the world that we live in today is the outcome of policy, it also means that we can change it. We do not have to live like this. Our communities do not have to be like this. If we fight for something like Medicare for all, we get to, imagine the state of Maine where working people can just get health care. Imagine the kinds of businesses people could start. Imagine the kind of art that people could create.
Yes.
Imagine the amount of extra time and energy and money that people would have merely because they were provided with health care from a system that already provides an immense amount of health care. We don't have to reinvent any wheels. We merely have to expand successful programs that we already have. And we can pay for it. And I can tell you that we can pay for it because we already pay for it. Right now, the United States spends 2.5 times more per person on health care than the next most expensive country on earth. 2.5 times. And we get some of the worst health outcomes in the developed world. You're already paying for it. We're already sinking money into the system. It's just that it's not a system that is built to pay nurses. It's not a system that is built to pay doctors. It's not a system that is built to pay medical support staff, provide services, buy equipment. It is a system that is built to allow a middleman to walk away with more money than those people will ever see in their lifetime. And they do it by reducing services so they can maximize shareholder profit. Thank you, Harvard Business School in the 1980s. We already spend the money. We already have the resources. We merely have to reallocate them because right now it is very clear that we have allocated them in what is possibly the worst way possible if healthcare was the point. That is in my opinion, before all else, that is what we need to fix. Rural healthcare is not profitable. There aren't enough people to pay for the services that they need. We already subsidize it. Rural hospitals in Maine, which are already failing, have been kept alive through Medicaid and Medicare payments. Those payments just took a $1 trillion cut over the next 10 years in the Republican budget bill so they can fund tax cuts to corporations and the ultra wealthy. That just happened, and those cuts have not even come down the pike yet. Imagine what we're looking at here in Eastern Maine when the federal money that kept these hospitals open in the first place begins to disappear. We are in for some very, very dark times ahead. I want to make clear, though, that while I think it is important that we look at the future with clarity, that we do not psych ourselves out. We don't let a dark future lull us into a sense that there is nothing that we can do. Because there is a lot that we can do. And I know that there is a lot that we can do because we have a history in this country of working people organizing and building better things. The dirty truth of the situation we find ourselves in today is that it cannot be laid at the feet of one political party. The system that we live in today is the outcome of both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Certain elements of it becoming simply elements of a corporate class, pushing bills and policies that leave behind working people and protect and incentivize the consolidation of wealth and power at the highest levels. I am utterly convinced that the Democratic Party, certainly at the national level, has lost the working class through its own actions. It is a party that wants the votes, thinks it deserves the votes of working people, while having effectively given up on them for the past 30 years. It is a party that tells itself a story about its own history in which, because of things it once did, it deserves loyalty and votes from the working class. That is not how this works. Political parties deserve support when they fight for people. They deserve the support of the people they fight for. And quite frankly, it's not surprising that much of the upper echelons of the Democratic Party have become tools of the corporate class because that's who they've been fighting for for the past 30 years.
That's right.
I don't believe that this needs to continue. I believe firmly that there are legacies in American history, in the history of the Democratic Party, that we can draw on to turn the party back into what it's supposed to be, which is a party of the working people. Those are legacies of the labor movement. Those are legacies of the civil rights movement. I want to make it clear, these are not legacies of asking permission.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get an 8-hour workday and a 40-hour work week because some people wrote nice letters to their congressman. We got it because working people organized and built power. And they used that power to get the things that they deserved and the things that they needed. We need to tap back into those legacies. No one is coming to save us. No one is coming down from on high to bring us the keys and open the safe and give us all the things that we know we deserve. We need to organize, we need to build power, and we need to fight for the things that we and our communities need to continue to exist. This is where the awkward part comes in. I can't do that. I can't go up to Washington as one single vote as a U.S. Senator and bring back Medicare for all. I can't go up as one U.S. Senator and end the cap on Social Security so we can have a fully funded Social Security forever and always and expand benefits. Those are going to be hard fights. We need to be able to draw on a much deeper well of power here in the state of Maine. And we need to rebuild a truly working class movement in the state of Maine. And so what I'm asking you to do is to join us in this fight. What I'm going to ask you to do is to get very, very uncomfortable. I'm going to ask you to go talk to your neighbors. I'm going to ask you to hand out flyers at farmers markets. I'm going to ask you to, down the road, canvass and go around your community telling your neighbors and your friends and people you may not know about this message. That is hard work, and it is uncomfortable. Who here has knocked on doors as a canvasser before? Who here has felt a little uncomfortable the first time they did it? But we need to do it. We need to do it. The only way that working people are going to be able to fight and advocate for themselves is to do it together as a group. It is a necessity. What we cannot do is continue to send establishment politicians down to Washington who are going to tell us that the things that we need are too hard to get, that the fights that it's going to require to get them are going to require too much work or too much time. And so instead they're going to give us some crumbs while billionaires in the oligarch class get the entire cookie. We cannot do this any longer. We need a different kind of politics again. It is not a new politics. In many ways, this is a very old American politics. But we need to build working class organization. We need to build a sense of solidarity amongst all of us. I am fully convinced that many of my good friends who voted for Donald Trump did so because they wanted a change. Donald Trump told them one thing that they knew was true, and that is that the system is screwing them. They knew it in their bones. And when he told them that they were right, many of them responded positively, and I don't blame them for doing it. Pretty soon here, it's going to become increasingly clear that the change people wanted and needed is not coming. Tariffs are going to continue, or at least the tariff discussion. The uncertainty is going to continue to drive up prices. Healthcare is going to continue to get worse. Housing is going to continue to get worse. These material issues are not going to be addressed by the Republican Party. We need to build an organization. We need to build a political movement that is ready to welcome many of those people back when they realize that they have been lied to. I do not believe there is any value in celebrating the suffering of other working people. And so as we move forward, I'm just asking you all to come turn out and to help. I need your energy. I need your time. I need your bodies. I need you to come out into the streets for rallies. I need you to come out to town hall meetings. I need you to canvass. It's the hard part. And the other hard part is, I need your money. I hate this part. We have raised over $1 million in less than a week. We've done it in all dollar donations. I think right now our average donation is $33. I think we have like 30,000 individual donations. It's something ridiculous. We're not going to take APAC money. We're not going to take Super PAC money. We're not going to take corporate PAC money. I refuse to do it. One, is anathema to my politics. Two, I'm 100% convinced that that is what's wrong with everything right now. We're not going to be able to beat them with money. We're not going to be able to out-fundraise the establishment with cash. But we are going to be able to beat them with people. And we need to raise enough money to mobilize people. Building organization is incredibly difficult. As a community organizer that did a lot of this work, frankly, as a volunteer for years, it is hard when there is no budget. But when you can start to pay field directors, when you can start paying volunteer coordinators, you can start paying people to open up offices, you can start paying people to identify what other campaigns and groups in people's communities can they connect with when they aren't just working on our campaign. I do not want to build a campaign to just get me elected to the US Senate. I want to use a campaign to go to the US Senate as a mechanism to build a real working class movement in the state of Maine. So what I'm going to ask you to do, when we're done here today, if this all sounds good to you, we have sign-up sheets outside. We have lots of volunteer opportunities. If you are fortunate enough to be able to write very big checks, we would appreciate those. If you can give us $1, we can appreciate that too. It all counts. I know that this is stuff that politicians say, and I always hate it when I hear it. But many of you know that until about a month ago, I had absolutely zero inclination to ever be a politician. And so I just hope that when I say it, maybe you trust me. We literally cannot do this without all of us. We need everybody, as many as we can get. And I feel very confident that we're going to be able to build a movement that's going to win us the primary, and that is going to win us the general, and that I'm going to go to the United States Senate as a U.S. Senator for the good people of Maine in 2026. My wife told me I have